Waitress accepts a stranger's coffee invitation, then learns he's the CEO millionaire she's always admired. She never expected a single cup of coffee to change her life. Megan Dawson, a hard-working waitress at a small-town diner, was used to routine morning shifts, smiling at patrons and dreaming of something bigger. Then one rainy Tuesday, a quiet stranger walked in. His gentle demeanor and generous tip piqued her curiosity, but she never guessed he'd invite her for coffee. Little did she know that this casual invitation would fling open the doors to an unimaginable twist, a journey of heartbreak, hope, and the revelation that the man across from her was none other than Richard Walters, the elusive millionaire CEO she'd admired for years. Megan Dawson never let discouragement shape her. 24 and dedicated, she spent nearly every sunrise clocking into Brewster's Diner, the beloved local eatery in Lake Heights, a picturesque town nestled between rolling hills and a shimmering lake. Brewster's had a comforting glow, worn leather booths, scuffed checkerboard floors, and the aroma of sizzling bacon melding with the fragrance of fresh coffee. Megan found solace in its familiarity. It was the perfect place to meet people from all walks of life, to listen to their stories, and imagine bigger dreams for herself. She'd grown up in Lake Heights, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. Her mum, Jennifer Dawson, always had a smile on her face, no matter how exhausted she was. When Megan was little, she'd stand in the kitchen, watch her mother come home after a grueling day, and vow to do whatever she could to give them both a better life someday. Watching Jennifer struggle instilled a fierce determination in Megan. She wanted more, not just for herself, but to repay the woman who had given her everything. But while Megan juggled plates of waffles and poured endless cups of coffee for early risers, the flame of her ambition sometimes flickered, starved of oxygen, in a place where dreams often felt too grand. For years, she'd harbored a secret admiration for a self-made billionaire named Richard Walters. She'd read every magazine feature about him, studied his philanthropic work, and even watched his keynote speeches online, bookmarking them to replay whenever she needed motivation. Richard's rags to riches story dazzled Megan. He'd grown up poor in a small Midwestern town, much like Lake Heights. After founding a technology startup in his cramped garage, he expanded it into a global conglomerate, Walters Innovations, worth billions. He then committed himself to philanthropic efforts worldwide. Megan admired how he seemed approachable despite his wealth and status, often photographed laughing with employees or reaching out to underprivileged communities. That level of success, however, felt worlds away from her. Still, reading about his journey made her realize that anything was possible if one had the drive and the vision. She taped a news clipping about him. Richard Walters pledges $50 million to combat youth homelessness, to the inside of her locker at Brewster's Diner. It served as her daily reminder: keep striving, keep caring. At Brewster's, Megan was known for her radiant smile and a natural flair for conversation. Early morning regulars like Mr. Johnson, a retired fisherman, and Mary Webb, the local librarian, were greeted warmly each day. Megan asked about their lives, their families. In return, they asked about her. She shrugged and said she was fine, though deep inside she wanted more: college, a dynamic career, a broader world than the diner's windows could frame. One early spring morning, she swept the diner floor, lost in thought about whether she could save enough tips to enroll in community college classes that fall. That's when the bell jingled, signaling a new customer's arrival. She glanced up at a tall man stepping in, his coat damp from the light drizzle outside. He was unassuming, maybe mid-30s, with a kind face. She greeted him with her standard brightness. "Welcome to Brewster's," she said. "Take a seat wherever you'd like." Little did she know, this simple exchange would set the stage for an encounter that would alter the course of her life forever, an encounter with a man whose identity would shake her to her core. The tall man settled into a booth near the window, rainwater dripping onto the seat beside him. He appeared pensive, perhaps a little weary. Megan walked over, menu in hand. "Rough weather out there," she said, offering a polite laugh. He looked up, a small smile curling at the corner of his mouth. "It's tranquil in its own way," he said quietly. "Makes me appreciate a warm, welcoming place." Megan felt an odd tug in her gut. There was something calm and collected about this stranger that contrasted sharply with the chaotic swirl of the diner's morning rush. "You're in the right spot," she assured him. "Would you like some coffee?" He nodded. "Yes, please, black." She jotted down the order. The rest of the breakfast shift flew by in its usual flurry plates of scrambled eggs, sizzling bacon, and fresh pastries weaving through the air. Every so often, Megan glimpsed the stranger flipping through his phone. His gaze occasionally roamed the diner, as though memorizing its corners. After refilling his coffee, she asked, "Is this your first time in Lake Heights?" His eyes flicked up from the phone's screen. "In a way, yes. I'm just passing through. Thought I'd stop for a bite." Something about him piqued her curiosity. He carried himself with the kind of self-assurance she associated with city executives, yet he didn't display the arrogance many travelers brought into Brewster's. He left a generous tip. When she thanked him, he simply nodded. "Have a wonderful day," he said as he rose to leave, pausing for a moment at the door. She sensed he might say something more, but he didn't. Instead, the bell jingled behind him. Megan tried to brush it off, chalking it up to just another polite customer. But for the rest of her shift, her mind kept drifting back to the warmth in his eyes. She chastised herself. She'd had crushes on customers before, a fleeting feeling that always vanished as soon as they paid the bill. Besides, she had no time for romantic distractions. She needed to focus on saving money for school and supporting her mother. However, destiny has a strange way of quietly weaving connections. The next morning, the man returned. Megan was on the opening shift again, wiping down the counters with a peppermint-scented disinfectant. Her co-worker, Andy, teased her about the lingering scent of peppermint. She stuck her tongue out at him playfully, ignoring the remark, and turned around only to lock eyes with the stranger who had taken the same booth by the window. He smiled in recognition, giving a light wave. She returned the gesture, that subtle thrill returning. Quickly, she hustled over to take his order. "You're back," she said with a grin, careful to keep her tone casual. "It's a good diner," he answered simply, leaning back in the booth. "And you have the best coffee in town." Megan giggled. "That's the first time anyone's called our coffee the best." She didn't mention that Brewster's coffee was often criticized for being slightly watery. This time, he ordered an omelette. She tried to glean more about him, but he remained coy, giving short, polite replies. Before he left, he scribbled something on the back of the receipt. Curious, Megan glanced at it. A note that read, "Thank you. You're very kind. R.W." Alongside it was another generous tip. She wondered if R.W. was a clue to his identity. But she had work to do and bills to pay, so she stowed the note in her apron pocket and got on with her day. She wasn't aware that she'd just taken the first step into a labyrinth of secrets, heartbreak, and impossible hope. Over the next few days, Megan couldn't shake the feeling that R.W. lingered in her mind. She closed her eyes at night, replaying his gentle smile and the way he surveyed the diner as though seeing more than just the decor. Part of her thought it was silly why fixate on a passing customer, but an intangible connection tugged at her. She told herself it was merely curiosity over his name and the cryptic initials. One afternoon, as clouds rolled in and the sky turned a steely grey, Megan covered a co-worker's shift. Business was slow, so she perched on a stool behind the counter, wiping down silverware and trying to fight off the sleepiness that came with post-lunch doldrums. The bell jingled again, and in walked R.W. This time he wore a crisp, charcoal grey suit, a garment so well tailored it looked as if it had been custom-made. His previously casual demeanor was replaced by something more focused, as though his mind buzzed with decisions. Despite that, he flashed her a warm smile when he approached the counter. "Long day?" Megan asked, trying to maintain her usual cheer. He exhaled a tired laugh. "You have no idea." She took his order for a latte, noticing how his gaze scanned the room, measuring it more carefully than before. The staff was minimal at this hour, only Megan and the cook in the back. When she brought out his drink, he spoke with a sudden earnestness that caught her off guard. "It's quieter now," he remarked, stirring his latte. "Mind taking a break for a minute?" Megan's heart thumped in her chest. "Sure. Let me just let the cook know I'll be off the floor." She slipped behind the kitchen door, though the cook, a gruff man named Carlos, was absorbed in chopping vegetables. She explained quickly that she'd be at the counter talking to a customer. He waved her off dismissively, telling her to go ahead. Returning, Megan slid onto a stool beside RW. He appeared both nervous and resolved. "I feel like we keep missing each other," he said. "My name's Richard Walters, and you are?" Megan's eyes went wide. "Megan Dawson," she managed to say, though her thoughts spiraled the moment he introduced himself. She swallowed hard. He had the same name as her business idol, but obviously that was just a coincidence. Richard Walters wasn't exactly an uncommon name. The Richard Walters she admired wore suits worth thousands and traveled the globe. This was probably just a successful man from the city passing through her tiny town. "It's great to meet you, Megan." He paused, sipping his latte before continuing. "I'm in town briefly on business, and I don't know many people here. I'd love some company. Would you be interested in grabbing coffee with me sometime, maybe tomorrow? I know you probably make good coffee here, but there's a place near the lakefront I've heard is nice." She blinked, unsure how to respond. Was a near stranger actually inviting her out for coffee? She wondered if she was misreading it. Yet he seemed sincere, respectful. Her mind buzzed with warnings. He's a random customer. You don't know him. What if something goes wrong? But a wave of curiosity and the memory of her own dreams compelled her to say yes. "Sure," she said softly, ignoring the swirl in her chest. "I'd love to." He smiled, relief evident in his expression, and handed her a small card with a phone number. "Text me," he said. "We'll figure out a time that fits your schedule." She took the card, heart fluttering. As he left, she stared at the slip of paper, half expecting it to vanish in her hands. She had just agreed to have coffee with someone named Richard Walters, a name that carried massive significance in her life. She shook her head, trying to dispel the absurd notion that it could possibly be the CEO she'd admired for years. The question nagged her, though, and the moment she was home, she locked herself in her room and booted up her old laptop. Searching for any local sightings of the Richard Walters, she found nothing. Then, in a moment of boldness, she typed in the number he'd given her. No results. She felt silly. Perhaps she was overthinking it. The only way to discover the truth was to go to that coffee meet-up and find out for herself. The next day, Megan finished her shift in a flurry of excitement and nerves. She texted Richard that morning, and he'd suggested they meet at noon at a cozy cafe near the lake. She changed out of her diner uniform, opting for a simple blouse and jeans. Looking in the mirror, she let her hair down, trying to appear more put together than her typical ponytailed waitress persona. Upon stepping outside, she inhaled the crisp midday air. A gentle breeze carried the scent of budding flowers, a sign that spring was truly taking hold. The cafe, named Kaylee's Roastery, sat on a grassy slope overlooking Lake Heights. Megan arrived a few minutes early, scanning the small parking lot, feeling her palms sweat as she clutched her phone. A sleek black car pulled in. Out stepped Richard, looking every bit the confident professional. He wore a casual navy blazer this time, paired with dark jeans. Megan felt a strange pang of intimidation. She realized how out of place she felt in her small-town attire, but Richard broke into a genuine smile when he saw her. "Hi," he greeted, stepping close enough that she could catch a faint whiff of his cologne, subtle, earthy. "Thanks for coming." "Hi," she managed, her voice softer than she intended. "I hope I'm not overdressed," he chuckled. "You look perfect. Let's get a table with a view." They found a cozy corner beside a large window framed by flower boxes brimming with red and yellow blooms. The lake shone under the midday sun, small ripples playing across its surface. As they settled, Megan felt an odd calm wash over her. Something about Richard's presence felt safe. Maybe it was the kindness behind his words, or the warmth in his eyes whenever he looked at her. Conversation flowed easily. She shared stories of waitressing at Brewster's Diner, her aspirations to go to community college, and her mother's unwavering support. He listened intently, occasionally asking thoughtful questions. After a while, the subject turned to him. "I work in business," he said, swirling his coffee in his mug. "Mainly technology and investments." "That must be interesting," Megan replied, sipping her latte. "You seem to travel a lot?" "Quite a bit," he confirmed, a flicker of apprehension in his gaze. "It's stressful but rewarding. Sometimes I miss having a simple routine." She wanted to probe further, but something in his voice warned her not to push too hard. They chatted about Lake Heights, the diner, and her future plans. Yet every time Megan thought about asking him outright if he was the Richard Walters, her tongue froze. She didn't want to appear gullible or rude. As the afternoon wore on, they meandered outside, taking a short stroll along the lake's edge. Eventually, he led her over to a bench beneath a willow tree, a gentle breeze carrying the sound of chirping birds. "You know," he said softly, staring at the tranquil waters, "I've spent a lot of time trying to get away from who I was, from where I came from. But in some ways, I feel closer to myself when I'm around people like you, people who appreciate genuine human connection." Her heart fluttered. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. "I think it's important to stay grounded, even when you achieve big things," she ventured. "I mean, there are so many powerful people out there who forget what it's like to be just regular." He looked at her and hesitated, as if measuring whether it was time to reveal something significant. "What if," he began slowly, "you learned that I'm not just any businessman, that I'm someone you might have heard about?" Megan's face flushed, her mind scrambling. "Oh God, he really is Richard Walters." She swallowed hard. "I'd probably be shocked, but, intrigued." With a grave exhale, he continued, "My full name is Richard Stephen Walters, the first own Walters Innovations. We develop software, fund startups, and do philanthropic work. I'm the CEO there." For a moment, her entire world seemed to tilt. She actually gaped, struggling to process that the modest, kind man she'd served coffee to was the same billionaire who had inspired her for years. She almost couldn't speak. When she finally managed, it came out in a fluster. "Oh my God, you're that Richard Walters?" He gave a half smile. "Yes, I'm afraid so." She had 100 questions. "Why are you here? Why a small diner? Why me?" But instead, she blurted out the first thing that came to mind. You left a tip. Why would you leave such a big tip if you're just passing through?" He laughed, a hearty, relieved chuckle that dispelled some of the tension. "Because I can, because servers work hard, and I believe in tipping well. And because, if I'm honest, I liked you the moment I saw you." They talked for hours, the sun climbing across the sky and eventually dipping toward the horizon. By the time they said goodbye, Megan felt as though she'd stepped into an entirely new universe, one where the boundaries of possibility had shifted. Yet as she returned home, confusion mingled with exhilaration. How could her life have collided with that of a man so far above her station, and what did it mean for her future? In the days that followed, Megan floated through her shifts in a haze of disbelief. She'd exchanged text messages with Richard, though he was busy with meetings in the nearby city and occasionally had to travel out of state. Their coffee outing had ended with a promise to keep in touch, and he seemed genuinely eager to stay connected. But Megan wrestled with doubts. Why her? What did she possibly offer to a multi-millionaire CEO? Her co-workers at Brewster's noticed her distracted air. Andy joked that she was daydreaming about some tall, dark, and handsome suitor. She tried to laugh it off, refusing to reveal that the mysterious stranger was, in fact, Richard Walters, philanthropic billionaire. She told herself it was better to keep that detail private. For now, she didn't want to invite scrutiny or misunderstanding. But small towns harbor few secrets. One afternoon, as she was tidying up a table after the lunch rush, she overheard Mr. Johnson, the retired fisherman, and Mary Webb gossiping at the counter. Apparently, some big shot from the city's been spotted around Lake Heights, Mr. Johnson said, swirling his cup of coffee. Heard he's a real high roller, and he's got his eye on local properties. Mary Webb nodded sagely. I saw a fancy black car by the lake the other day. Rumor has it that Richard Walters, the tech tycoon, is interested in investing in Lake Heights. Maybe building a new resort or something. Could be good for tourism. Megan's heart thudded. So, the rumor mill had caught on. If Richard was scouting possible projects, it made sense he'd spend time there. But how long before people discovered that she'd been meeting him? A swirl of emotions, pride, worry, excitement tightened her chest. Later that evening, she sat with her mum, Jennifer, in their modest living room. The conversation turned to her recent mood. You seem different, Jennifer observed gently, setting aside her library book. Happier, but also anxious. Something happen? Megan hesitated, chewing her lip. She considered telling her mother everything, but a part of her wanted to protect this delicate new connection from prying eyes. I've just been thinking about the future, she said, about the possibility of going to college, maybe bigger dreams. You know how I've always looked up to that entrepreneur, Richard Walters? Jennifer nodded, smiling. Oh, yes, the man you mentioned so often, the one who rose from nothing. That's him, Megan confirmed. I guess reading about his success motivates me. Jennifer reached out and patted Megan's hand. Keep dreaming, honey, and don't sell yourself short. You're bright, and you have a good heart. Megan smiled, though guilt gnawed at her for not telling the whole truth. She resolved she'd share her secret once she was certain where this connection with Richard was headed. The next morning, halfway through her shift, a black Mercedes glided into the diner's parking lot. Every head in Brewster's turned. Out stepped a well-dressed man and a few suited individuals, clearly business associates. Megan watched from behind the counter, pulse racing. She recognized Richard immediately, though he seemed different now, more in his element, commanding a presence as he directed the other suits. When he entered, his gaze sought hers. She gave a tentative wave, and he stepped over with a calm confidence. Good morning, Megan, he said warmly, though he cleared his throat and added in a more formal tone, I'm here to meet with some local officials. Would you mind bringing a pot of your coffee to the corner booth? We'll be discussing some business, if that's all right. She nodded, doing her best to mask her nerves. As they settled into the booth, Megan moved between the kitchen and the dining area, delivering pastries, fresh coffee, and water. She overheard snippets of conversation words like land acquisition, joint venture, foundation grants. Richard remained collected, occasionally meeting her eyes with a reassuring smile. But as the men left, she caught the gaze of a local alderman who stared at her curiously. The rumor mill was about to go into overdrive, and she sensed that this was just the beginning of a whirlwind that could either uplift her life or tear it apart. Later that evening, Megan's phone buzzed with a message from Richard. Richard, hope your day wasn't too hectic after we showed up. Sorry for the extra attention. Her heart quickened. She typed back, Megan, it's okay. Everything's fine. People are just curious. Within minutes his reply came, Richard, would you like to step away from the prying eyes and join me for dinner tonight? She stared at her phone, debating, was it wise to be seen in public with him again, especially now that word was spreading about a wealthy stranger in town? Then she shook her head. Why should she hide? She typed, a quick acceptance. They agreed to meet at a restaurant just outside Lake Heights, a place known for its lakeside views and candlelit dinners. Megan arrived a bit early, nerves crackling. She had chosen a simple but elegant green dress and lightly curled her hair. Richard arrived wearing a navy suit without a tie, formal but not stuffy. They chose a secluded table on the veranda, overlooking the lake glimmering under moonlight. A server approached with menus, the flicker of candlelight casting dancing shadows on the wooden deck. Richard leaned forward, voice low. "I owe you an explanation," he said, interlacing his fingers. "I didn't mean to drop the news of who I am on you so abruptly. It's just, I've been traveling for months, dealing with business crises, philanthropic decisions, endless board meetings. I needed a change of pace, so I decided to explore smaller towns like Lake Heights on my own terms, to see if there are opportunities where my foundation can actually make a difference. Then I stumbled upon Brewster's, and you." Megan listened intently, swirling the water in her glass. "I understand. It must be overwhelming to live under the public eye. But why me? Why confide in someone you just met?" He offered a small, disarming shrug. "Because I saw kindness in you, a genuineness I rarely encounter. Whenever I meet people these days, they seem to want something, an investment, a donation, a deal. With you, it's real, and I've realized how much I miss real." Her cheeks heated, and she couldn't help but smile. She felt a warmth blossom in her chest, a sense that maybe all her quiet hopes and daily hustles had led her to this improbable moment. But a tiny voice in her head whispered caution. Could a waitress from a tiny diner truly fit into the glittering world of a billionaire CEO? Dinner passed in a flow of conversation about their backgrounds, fears, and hopes. Richard spoke about the early days of Walter's Innovations, how he'd coded in a cramped one-room apartment, sleeping on a cot. He recalled how nobody believed in him until he met a venture capitalist who took a chance. Megan spoke of her late father, whom she barely remembered, and how her mother had sacrificed so much for her. But just as they were about to order dessert, the hush of the restaurant was shattered by the appearance of a local journalist, Rob Langley, known for freelancing stories to bigger media outlets. He sauntered toward their table, camera in hand. "Mr. Walters," he began, too loudly, "I was wondering if I could get a statement about your interest in Lake Heights. Are the rumors true that you're planning a major development here?" And he shifted his gaze to Megan. "Is this your new romantic partner?" Megan froze, her hand gripping the tablecloth. She felt Richard's tension immediately. He stood, lips pressed together. "I'm sorry, this is a private dinner." "No comments," he said coolly. Langley persisted, snapping a photo. That single click felt deafening, like a thunderbolt in the quiet night. Megan instinctively turned her face away, panic rising. Richard stepped forward, blocking the camera. "Stop, now." For a tense moment, it seemed like Rob might escalate the confrontation, but the restaurant staff intervened, politely but firmly escorting the journalist out. Megan's heart hammered. She looked at Richard, who was breathing hard, anger flickering in his eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked, gently placing a hand over hers. She nodded shakily, but she couldn't deny the pit of dread forming in her stomach. If rumors had merely been a whisper before, they'd soon be a roar. How would her life change once everyone learned she was involved, even casually, with a powerful billionaire? As they left the restaurant, Richard escorted her to her car, an apology spilling from his lips. "I'm sorry. I should have known this might happen." She managed a brave smile. "I guess it's part of your world, right?" He exhaled, stepping closer to softly brush a strand of hair from her face. "I don't want it to overshadow you." She looked up, heart pounding. "I can handle it," she whispered, trying to believe her own words. In that moment, she was certain of only one thing. Her life would never be the same again. The photograph of Richard Walters and Megan Dawson at the lakeside restaurant appeared in the Lake Heights Chronicle 2 days later. The headline screamed, "Billionaire in town, new love or business deal." As Megan walked into Brewster's that morning, the paper's front page sat on nearly every table, and heads turned in her direction like sunflowers tracking the light. Her shift began with a choking tension in the air. Andy sidled up to her at the coffee station. So he teased with forced lightness. "Any chance you'll quit your day job now that you're apparently dating a billionaire?" She shot him a glare, her cheeks aflame. "It's not like that." Sure, he said, but his eyes gleamed with curiosity. "Just be careful. People around here love gossip." She swallowed hard, determined to maintain her composure. But as she approached the tables to take orders, she overheard whispered conversations and felt the weight of stares. Some customers seemed fascinated, asking pointed questions about Richard. Others were more critical, muttering judgments under their breath. Midway through her shift, Jennifer Dawson walked into the diner, worry etched on her face. She carried a copy of the Chronicle under her arm. "Sweetheart," she said softly, pulling Megan aside, "is this really happening? Are you involved with that Richard Walters?" Megan took a shaky breath, then nodded. "We've been talking, Mom. He's kind. It just happened." Jennifer squeezed her daughter's hand. "I'm not judging you. You deserve every happiness. But you need to be prepared. People can be cruel when they see two people from very different worlds together." Tears stung Megan's eyes, but she blinked them back. She felt the ground shifting beneath her feet on one hand. She was elated that Richard truly cared for her. On the other, she was terrified of the chaos swirling around them. Could their bond withstand the ugly side of fame? The tension only escalated when, later that evening, a black SUV pulled into the diner's parking lot. Out stepped an impeccably dressed woman with a sleek bob haircut. She marched in, her designer heels clicking on the diner's worn floors. The woman scanned the room with distaste until she spotted Megan. "Miss Dawson, I presume?" the woman said, every syllable clipped. "I'm Margaret Holden, Mr. Walters' public relations manager." Megan froze, wiping her hands on her apron. "Yes? Is something wrong?" Margaret huffed a tight smile. "Mr. Walters has been bombarded with inquiries about his personal life. He values his privacy. I'm here to mitigate damage and remind you of the importance of discretion." Heat rushed to Megan's cheeks. "I haven't told anyone, nevertheless. Your photograph together has circulated beyond this town. We're concerned about the narrative. Mr. Walters has a corporate image to uphold, and we can't let unconfirmed rumors spiral." Margaret's gaze swept over the diner, unimpressed. "Should you and Mr. Walters choose to continue, whatever this is, we need to manage the story carefully. Paparazzi will descend soon." Megan's chest tightened, her anger flaring. "Look, I'm not a scandal waiting to happen. I didn't ask for publicity. We just like each other." Margaret's expression softened momentarily, but her tone remained firm. "Then it's best you understand what you're walking into. I'll be in touch." She turned on her heel, leaving Megan feeling both humiliated and protective. Protective of her blossoming relationship with Richard, and humiliated by the insinuation that she was a liability. The moment Margaret left, Megan's phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Richard, the first, so sorry about Margaret. She means well, but she's too blunt. I want to see you tonight if you're free." Megan's heart soared despite the confrontation. She typed back quickly, "Megan, yes, let's meet. I need to talk to you." That evening, after finishing her shift, she drove out to a secluded overlook that Richard had recommended. The sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in orange and pink. He stood by a wooden fence, hands tucked into his coat pockets, looking out over the tranquil waters below. When he saw Megan, his face broke into a gentle smile. She rushed to him, her eyes brimming. Your PR manager came to the diner. She basically told me to keep my distance if I don't want to tarnish your image." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I never wanted you to face that. Margaret is used to dealing with corporate crises. She doesn't understand personal matters." Megan's voice cracked. "But this is my life, my home. People are judging me, calling me a gold digger, or worse. I'm scared, Richard." He pulled her into a comforting embrace. "I know. I'm sorry. I'll handle Margaret. If you want me to walk away, to spare you from this scrutiny, She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "No. I just need to know if we have a future that's worth fighting for." He placed a hand under her chin, lifting her gaze to his. "I promise you, I'm in this with you if you'll have me." The setting sun glowed behind them as they shared a tender kiss, the hush of the evening enveloping them. But as Megan closed her eyes, a flicker of doubt remained. Were their feelings for each other strong enough to withstand the avalanche of gossip, the corporate pressures, and the vast divide between their worlds? In the weeks that followed, Megan and Richard tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. He continued his discreet property evaluations and philanthropic meetings in Lake Heights, while she worked her shifts at Brewster's Diner, deflecting curious questions with polite smiles. They met often, in quiet corners of the town, picnicking at the lakeside, driving out to the countryside, or simply strolling down the less traveled dirt roads. Despite the hush-hush nature of their outings, local rumors still percolated, and paparazzi occasionally lurked in the distance. Meanwhile, Megan noticed a change in her mother. Jennifer seemed distant, lost in thought, as if burdened by something. One evening, Megan found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a faded photograph of Megan's late father. "Mom, are you okay?" Megan asked gently. Jennifer's eyes met hers, brimming with an unspoken sadness. She hesitated before speaking, her voice trembling. I've been thinking about your father, about how proud he would be of you pursuing your dreams, meeting important people." Megan squeezed her hand. "I wish I remembered more about him, but you did so much for me, Mom. I only want to make you proud." Jennifer's lower lip quivered. "I'm always proud of you, always." Megan sensed there was more Jennifer wanted to say, but her mother's gaze flickered away, tears threatening to spill. Megan decided not to push. Her mother would speak in her own time. That weekend, Richard invited Megan to a charity gala in a nearby city. At first, she balked. Attending a formal event with high-profile guests and cameras felt like stepping into a lion's den. But he assured her that it was a relatively private fundraiser for the Walters Foundation, aimed at raising money for local youth centers. Determined to be by his side, Megan mustered her courage and agreed. He sent a car to pick her up, and when she emerged, wearing a modest yet elegant gown, she nearly lost her breath upon seeing him in a tailored tuxedo. The transformation felt like a scene from a fairy tale, an ordinary waitress stepping into a shimmering world she'd only read about. But she kept her head high, determined not to let intimidation overwhelm her. The gala took place in a grand hall decked with dazzling lights and live music. Wealthy philanthropists mingled with city officials and socialites. Megan noticed the curious stares and hushed whispers as she entered on Richard's arm. Her heart thumped wildly, but Richard placed a reassuring hand over hers, guiding her through the crowd. Later in the evening, she found a moment alone by the refreshment table. She sipped sparkling water, trying to catch her breath. That's when a familiar face approached, Margaret Holden, his PR manager. This time, Margaret's demeanor was less confrontational, perhaps softened by the night's charitable atmosphere. "You look lovely," Margaret said stiffly. "Richard is quite taken with you." Megan managed a tight smile. "I appreciate him more than you know." Margaret's posture relaxed ever so slightly. "I am only trying to protect him, Miss Dawson. He's built his empire on a certain image. Romantic entanglements can complicate that." Megan's voice trembled with conviction. "I am not here to exploit him. I never have been. Margaret studied her carefully, as if re-evaluating. Then she offered a curt nod. Perhaps I misjudged you. For what it's worth, I hope it works out, if only for his happiness. Before Megan could respond, Richard reappeared, slipping an arm around Megan's waist. Margaret took her leave. Everything all right? He asked, concern knitting his brow. She nodded, giving him a grateful smile. Yes, I think we made some progress. The night culminated in a speech by Richard, highlighting the Walters Foundation's efforts to support underprivileged youth. Megan watched with pride and teary eyes as he spoke passionately about his own humble beginnings. His words stirred a memory in her, how she'd clipped out articles about him, how his dedication to helping others had inspired her to hope for more in life. But later that night, after the gala ended and she'd returned home, Megan found her mother awake, sitting at the dining room table. Jennifer's eyes were puffy from crying. A single envelope lay open on the table, a letter inside. "What's wrong, Mum?" Megan asked gently. Jennifer pulled her closer. "There's something I've never told you," she whispered, voice cracking. "It's about your father's family. They come from money, significant money. When your father and I married, they disowned him for being with someone of lesser means. We were cut off. When he died, they never reached out." Megan's mind reeled. Her parents had been estranged from wealthy relatives. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, sinking into a chair. Tears slid down Jennifer's cheeks. "Because they've contacted me. They read about you in the news, connected the dots. They want to see you. Something about bridging an old family rift now that you're in the spotlight." Megan's throat tightened. It was all too much, her relationship with Richard, the local gossip, the new demands of his world. Oh, and now an unexpected wealthy family connection from her father's side. She rose, half-dazed, feeling the walls closing in. Her father's family had shunned them, and now that she was linked to a billionaire, they suddenly wanted to reconnect. It felt like a betrayal, yet also a chance to learn more about her heritage. "Megan," Jennifer pleaded, "I don't know what you should do, but I didn't want to hide it any longer." Numb, Megan backed away, tears threatening. "I need time to think." She closed her bedroom door behind her, sliding to the floor. Everything in her life was changing so quickly she could barely breathe. She wondered if love, family secrets, and big money could ever coalesce into something stable, or if they were a recipe for heartbreak. In the days that followed, Megan kept her newfound family connection a secret from Richard. He was preoccupied with preparations for a major press conference in Lake Heights, where he planned to announce a substantial investment in the town's infrastructure and philanthropic projects. Margaret's team was in overdrive, coordinating media invites and local official appearances. The event was only a week away, and tensions ran high. Amid the chaos, Megan wrestled with her father's family's sudden re-emergence. A letter had arrived at the house, inviting her to lunch at a posh hotel in the city. Her paternal aunt, Estelle Dawson, wanted to meet. She vacillated between anger and curiosity. Did they truly regret ostracizing her father, or were they only reaching out because of her connection with Richard Walters? She decided to confront her confusion head-on. One afternoon, while Richard was busy, she took a bus to the city and arrived at the upscale hotel. Tall marble pillars lined the lobby, and the air smelled of fresh-cut lilies. Nervously, she approached the reception desk, only to be directed to a private dining room. Inside, a refined older woman with silver-streaked hair stood near the window, gazing out at the skyline. She turned as Megan entered, her features softening with recognition. "Megan," she greeted, voice trembling with emotion, "I'm Estelle, your aunt." Despite Megan's anger, she couldn't ignore the familial resemblance. Estelle's high cheekbones echoed those in her father's old photos. They sat at a table draped in white linen, a pot of tea steaming between them. "I'm grateful you agreed to meet," Estelle began, hands clasped in her lap. "We owe you and your mother an apology for how my parents treated your father." Megan pursed her lips. Why now? Why reach out after so many years? Estelle lowered her gaze. I won't lie to you. The family business is struggling. We saw the news about you and Richard Walters, and we hoped we could mend fences, perhaps find a way to help each other. Help each other? Megan repeated, voice tight. I'm not a bank or some convenience. Estelle's cheeks flushed. You have every right to be angry. My father was a proud man, and when your parents married, he felt betrayed by your father's choice to forego the family's societal expectations. But I've always regretted how we lost touch. Your father was my beloved brother, Megan. Please believe me. A swirl of conflicting emotions tangled in Megan's chest, betrayal, sorrow, curiosity. She thought about Jennifer, her mother, and how they had scrimped and saved all those years. They'd faced hardships alone while these wealthy relatives lived in comfort, willfully ignoring them. Yet Estelle's remorseful eyes bore into Megan with genuine regret. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, but I'd like to be part of your life, she said, even if there's no financial help to be had from Mr. Walters. But if he's looking for new investments, the Dawson family business is in real estate, and we're open to partnerships. Megan exhaled, tears burning at her eyes. I can't promise anything. I don't even know where Richard stands on new deals. This isn't about him. I need time to consider whether I want you in my life at all. Estelle nodded solemnly. I understand. They parted on uncertain terms. Megan left the hotel, feeling the weight of guilt and confusion pressing on her shoulders. She had to tell Richard. She had to find a way to separate her personal desire for closure from the opportunism that her estranged family seemed to display. That evening she called Richard, her voice trembling. Can we meet? She asked. There's something I need to share. They gathered at her house, with Jennifer away at a late shift. In the cozy glow of the living room, Megan recounted the entire story, her father's estranged wealthy family, their sudden outreach, and Estelle's invitation. Richard listened intently, his expression a mixture of concern and empathy. I'm so sorry, he murmured, taking her hand. That must have been incredibly difficult. What do you want to do? Megan's voice cracked. I'm not sure. Part of me wants a relationship with them if they're genuinely remorseful, but I can't shake the feeling that they're using me to get close to you. He sighed, brushing a thumb over her knuckles. I'll respect whatever you decide. If you want me to hear them out about any business proposals, I will. If you don't, I won't. Your feelings come first. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Thank you. I don't want you caught in my family drama. We're in this together. Remember? He said softly, pulling her into a comforting embrace. In that moment, she realized how deeply she'd come to rely on him. This connection felt like more than a chance encounter. It was a partnership forged in trust. Yet as she rested her head against his chest, she couldn't shake the sense that more storms lay ahead, storms that might test the fragile ties between them. The day of Richard's much-anticipated press conference dawned bright and clear, the kind of morning that hinted at spring's optimism. A grand stage had been erected at the edge of Lake Heights Park. Politicians, business leaders, and media crews swarmed the area, jostling for prime positions. Dozens of curious locals gathered too, eager to see if the rumors of a large-scale investment in their town were true. Backstage, Megan stood with Richard, trying to quell her nerves. She wore a simple yet elegant outfit that Margaret had helped her choose, tasteful and modest enough not to draw undue attention away from the event itself. Despite Margaret's initial reservations, she now seemed invested in portraying Megan in a positive light. A reluctant alliance, perhaps, but an alliance nonetheless. You ready? Megan whispered, noticing Richard's deep breaths. He gave her a wry grin. This part is always nerve-wracking, no matter how many times I do it. Margaret stepped forward, clipboard in hand. Showtime in 2 minutes, Mr. Walters. Then her gaze flicked to Megan. You'll stand off to the side with me until he finishes. After that, a short photo op. Megan nodded, suppressing a flicker of anxiety. She hated the idea of being photographed like a trophy, but she knew it came with Richard's public life. The conference began with the mayor's introduction. Then Richard stepped up to the podium, cameras clicking like frenzied insects. He spoke with clarity and purpose, announcing a significant plan to revitalize Lake Heights Lakeside Walkway, fund a new community center, and partner with local businesses to boost tourism. Applause rippled through the crowd. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the applause. Is that all part of your plan with your new girlfriend's family? The question came from none other than Rob Langley, the freelance journalist who had interrupted their dinner weeks ago. He stood among the media throng, microphone in hand, a sneer on his face. Murmurs erupted in the crowd. Richard's jaw tightened, but he maintained composure. I'm not aware of any formal partnership with Megan's family, he said calmly, though a vein in his temple pulsed. This project is purely philanthropic and community-driven. Langley smirked. Surely you've heard about the real estate deals her relatives are seeking? Isn't it convenient how they popped back into her life as soon as she started seeing you? He twisted toward the cameras. Word is, the Dawson family is hoping to secure a major investment from Walters Innovations. Care to comment? Megan's stomach clenched. She could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes pivoting to her, though she was out of the spotlight. Her heart pounded in her ears. Richard's voice remained measured, though tension cracked its edges. No comment on personal matters. He attempted to steer the conversation back to the community project, but the damage was done. The quiet hum of gossip now surged into a frenzy. Reporters shouted overlapping questions. Is it true you're using Lake Heights for personal gain? Has the Dawson family demanded money? Is this philanthropic facade just a front for profiteering? It was chaos. Police officers and event staff rushed to restore order. Margaret guided Richard off stage, hurrying him toward a waiting SUV. Megan followed, her hands shaking. Within the sanctuary of the vehicle, Richard exhaled hard. Damn that Langley. He looked at Megan, worry etched in his features. Are you okay? Her voice trembled. I just can't believe how quickly everything spiraled. Margaret's phone buzzed incessantly. She checked it, grimacing. We have reporters now emailing about your father's estranged relatives. Megan. They're spinning it, hasn't he gold digger family out for Walter's fortune? This is a PR nightmare. Tears threatened behind Megan's eyes, but she steadied herself. I never wanted any of this. She shot a desperate look at Richard. Should I just step away? Would it help if I left town for a while? He reached for her hand. I don't want you to run. We'll handle it. But she could see the strain in his eyes. The world he navigated daily was now intruding upon her life with fierce intensity. Even if Richard was willing to shoulder it, Megan didn't know if she had the strength to endure the relentless scrutiny. That night, they found a brief respite at the small cabin Richard had rented near the lake. They sat by a flickering fireplace, the glow casting dancing shadows on the wooden walls. Megan could hardly eat, her appetite lost to a knot of worry. This has to die down eventually, Richard said gently, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. She let out a shaky sigh. I'm not sure it ever will, not if every small detail about my life is fodder for gossip. He met her gaze, sorrow flickering. We could go somewhere else, somewhere quiet. But my business, I have responsibilities, and you have your own dreams in Lake Heights. She nodded, tears glistening. I do, but I also want to be with you. He leaned in, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. I promise. We'll find a way through this. As the embers in the fireplace glowed low, Megan wished she could believe him without doubt. Yet she felt on the brink of breaking, a storm of speculation swirling around her, overshadowing the genuine bond they'd formed. And she couldn't shake the fear that, In trying to preserve Richard's image and protect her own dignity, she might lose him or lose herself. In the weeks that followed the disastrous press conference, a barrage of headlines rained down on both Richard and Meghan. National news outlets picked up the story. Small-town waitress entangles billionaire in family scheme, read one headline. Another shouted, gossip erupts over Walter's latest romance, gold digger or true love. Meghan tried to avoid reading them, but it was impossible to evade the whispers entirely. Jennifer worried incessantly, apologizing for keeping secrets about Meghan's paternal relatives, though Meghan reassured her mother it wasn't her fault. The Dawson family's re-emergence had indeed sparked more media interest, but Meghan refused to let them contact Richard for business proposals. Her Aunt Estelle wrote letters pleading for forgiveness, for a chance to meet again, but Meghan remained cautious. Trust, once broken, needed time to rebuild. Meanwhile, Richard juggled an avalanche of meetings and PR damage control. Margaret and the Walters Innovations team worked around the clock to direct the narrative back to the philanthropic project for Lake Heights, but the salacious story of a billionaire's romance with a waitress overshadowed everything else. One afternoon, Meghan decided she needed space and perspective. She took a day off from Brewster's Diner and drove to a hiking trail nestled in the hills behind town. The steep path rose amid tall pines and mossy rocks, leading to a vantage point that overlooked Lake Heights, the water glimmering like a sapphire beneath the sun. She breathed deeply, letting the crisp mountain air fill her lungs. The question gnawing at her mind was, could she handle the relentless spotlight if she stayed with Richard? Or would she always be labeled a fortune hunter, an opportunist? As if sensing her turmoil, her phone buzzed. It was Richard. "Hey," he said softly when she answered. "Are you all right? I went to the diner and Andy said you weren't coming in today." "I'm on a hike," she admitted. "Needed a break." A pause. "Where are you? Let me join you if you want me to." She hesitated. Part of her wanted solitude, but another part yearned for his reassuring presence. "Okay, the Western Trailhead," she murmured. Half an hour later, she spotted him climbing the path, slightly out of breath, wearing hiking boots and a windbreaker. The sight of him, set against pine trees and a wide blue sky, tugged at her heart. He looked a bit like the man who had first walked into Brewster's, with his coat damp from the rain, unassuming, kind, and quietly determined. He pulled her into a gentle hug. "How are you holding up?" She gestured to the sweeping view. "Sometimes, looking at the world from up here makes me feel like my problems are smaller." He nodded, following her gaze. "I wish I could fix everything, shield you from the negativity." Meghan exhaled slowly. "I know, but I also know I don't want to lose you. Just, how do we live like this, Richard?" He reached for her hand. "I've been thinking. My team can craft a statement clarifying the situation about your father's estranged relatives, how you had no idea they would surface. We can address the rumors head on, and if they persist," he shrugged helplessly, "we keep doing good work. Eventually, the tabloids get bored and move on." She chewed her lip. "And what about my life here? Am I forever known as the waitress who snagged a billionaire?" His eyes flashed. "You're so much more than that." "And we'll show them." They sat on a large rock, side by side, the sun warming their backs. Richard took a deep breath. "You told me once about wanting to go to college. You shouldn't give up on that. If the diner becomes too suffocating, consider enrolling. We can figure out scholarships, or if you're uncomfortable with me paying." She placed a hand on his arm, tears glistening in her eyes. "I want to stand on my own 2 feet, but—" "Thank you," he nodded, understanding her pride and independence. "I respect that." Silence fell, thick with 1,000 unspoken feelings. At last, Meghan found the courage to voice her deepest fear. "Do you think we can really make this work? We come from such different worlds." He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his expression tender. "We share the same values, kindness, resilience, wanting to help others. That's what matters. The rest is noise. Emotion welled within her, and she pressed her forehead against his. "I love you," she whispered, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess them. His breath caught, and a wide grin spread across his face. "I love you, Megan Dawson. From the moment you smiled at me in that diner, I knew you were special." They sealed their pledge with a kiss, the pine-scented breeze carrying away their anxieties. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more hurdles, more rumors, more corporate demands. But in that moment, high above lake heights, they both chose to believe that love could transcend the clamor of the world. In the weeks and months ahead, Megan would forge a path to her future. She'd confront her estranged relatives with honesty and caution, forging a fragile truce. She'd stand proudly beside Richard, not as a shadow, but as a partner in charitable endeavors and in life. And through it all, she would remain the kind-hearted waitress who once accepted a stranger's invitation for coffee, only to learn that fate sometimes hands us miracles in the most unassuming cups. And so, Megan Dawson's life changed forever the day she agreed to grab a cup of coffee with a mysterious stranger. What began as a simple spark of curiosity grew into a life-altering love story, complete with challenges, heartbreaks, and ultimately unwavering devotion. In the face of family secrets and media frenzy, Megan and Richard stood firm in their bond, proving that sincerity triumphs over gossip and genuine kindness can bridge even the widest gaps between people. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of hidden truths, small-town dreams, and the power of love. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales that remind us hope can bloom in the most unexpected places. By showing your support, you help us continue bringing stories that stir the heart and ignite the imagination, because every one of us deserves a happily ever after.